Are you really ready to fuel your success as an investor in your personal mindset and being part of a community that wants every person to succeed? Welcome to the Thriving Investor Podcast with author, educator, successful non-traditional investor, Troy Fullwood. Turn up the volume and let's get you set up to thrive.
All right, everybody, welcome back. This is Troy Fullwood with Thriving Investor, and today I've got not one, but two amazing gentlemen with me, Mr. TJ Osterman and Mr. Rick Allen, both of them from the Paperstac, and you can go to paperstac.com, by the way, to learn more about them. But Rick himself, we got two bios, so I'm going to read a little bit of Rick's, I'm going to read a little bit of TJ's, and then we're going to dive into some questions. We're going to learn what Paperstac's all about, how it's growing, the value that it's bringing to the industry, and how it's helping investors improve their portfolio structure, as well as how it's helping investors grow their portfolio. So Mr. Rick Allen, for the last 10 years, has been an active investor and co-founder and fund manager of Cloud Capital Management, and is the co-founder of Paperstac with Mr. TJ Osterman. He's conducted transactions with large A-list institutions. Rick is an expert, experienced in investment strategies of the real estate sector with a primary focus on discounted acquisitions and distressed assets. Mr. TJ, husband, father, and entrepreneur, and is interested in the positivity impact society any way he can, or the positively impact, sorry about that, TJ, buddy, impact society any way he can. His current interests lie in helping understand the Reg A alternative market, millennial generation, Gen Zers impact, investment, distribution, ledger, tech, blockchain, and helping to foster innovation, entrepreneurship, and independent thinking. So thank you, gentlemen, very much for being here today. We were just talking a moment ago off the record, AKA in the green room environment, the digital green room, and we were talking about the industry and where it's at and what's going on and what you gentlemen are doing. And tell me, where are you guys at in Paperstac? I know you guys have been working diligently at this for several years now.
Oh yeah.
Tell us about your history. Tell why and how you got here.
Well, I mean, I'll jump on it. First of all, Troy, thanks for having us on. It's always good to spend some time with you. So Paperstac kind of started, I guess it was in around 2013, 2014, when we went to do a trade. And it was just, for a long story short, it was very convoluted. We were doing a trade, didn't really know who we were working with. We had $250,000 out. There was a lot of miscommunication going on when we actually did finish the trade. The collateral files that we actually took in, some of them were just copies. There was no original documents. And so, you know, being relatively new at that time, we're like, there's got to be a better way. We love the investment class, but we're like, if this is ever going to go and become a mainstream investment, there needs to be some clarity in the process. And there was not really a process, we found. So we started Paperstac, and you know, we put money out. We sent development over to India and got it back 4 or 5 months later and looked at it and had a developer friend look at it, and it was really garbage. And so we said, okay, if we're going to be serious about this at Paperstac and really make this something special, we need to bring in an in-house developer. And so that's what we did. And we spent a couple years on development and launched our first iteration, kind of a soft launch, in September. And immediately learned a bunch of stuff that we didn't do right. And so we have went into a complete rewrite on the program, and we're doing our second launch in the day after Labor Day this year. It'll be out. And there's a lot of cool features. So
yeah, we quickly realized that when we got into a technology side of the business, when we primarily came from the brick and mortar stuff, you know, buying it, there was real estate investors, and not really understanding the technology piece, thinking that we could just outsource it through Upwork or Fiverr to a cheap developer in India and getting it back. That $25,000 is like a week's work in some serious development, when it comes down to it. So we realized that you have to put, especially with how many moving parts there are when it comes to dealing in this asset class, there are a lot. And fortunately, there's a lot of digital solutions out there that we can leverage. But a lot of the stuff, because there is no baseline out there, we have to develop that's, from scratch. And the developer that we brought on, we gave him an equity piece in the company. And we realized how many hundreds of thousands of dollars of development
we're
up to this point we're into it for.
probably $500,000 in, salary and stuff like that. That's about what it equates to. So it's been a steep hill to climb, but for instance, this iteration will allow people to conduct pools of transactions. So you can you can conduct a whole pool together, which has been nice. The prior release it was a one-off. You could do them on a one-off basis. Okay. We were just talking today. We felt like the first launch serviced about 70% of the note buyers out there. And this new launch should take around 95% of it. So it's been exciting.
And kind of like you were talking, Troy, earlier was, we're trying to bring this asset class and make it more available to more people. There's such a huge barrier of entry getting into this that a lot of those ones that are, get done with the class or they learn about it, they try to dive in and they're just like, wow, there's no real good standardized system or place to go source the inventory and walk through a deal. So we really think that can really lower that barrier of entry for more people into this asset class. Mm-hmm. And right now our focus is obviously servicing the people that are already currently in this space. There's a lot of us out there and there's a lot of people that are doing, serious deals. And we just want to augment the process. We don't want to reinvent a whole new thing. We can just augment what was already been going on, add a little bit more ease of use to it. And that's what Paperstac can do.
That's great. Yeah, I've always said that our industry is very prehistoric. And our industry was the first of real estate, back when they first settled the colonies, way before any of us walked on this earth. People did business. They would sell properties through notes and deeds. And it was funny because a friend of mine owns a framing company, and he does called celebrity memorabilia and stuff like that. And he had a bunch of pictures, and there was one that was a Studebaker. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's got, really cool cutouts. And the reason I'm telling you the story is there was this piece of paper in there and it said deed. I said, what's this? He goes, that deed right there is an original deed of the first piece of land that the first Studebaker factory was ever built on.
Wow, that's cool.
And I was like, really? And he goes, oh yeah. I said, okay. I'm like, I'll put my name on that. So
that's awesome.
It was really kind of one of these things like, I guess, it's there, but you don't really think about it. And then you start looking at the industry and you see where the government got involved and brought in, Section 32, predatory lending, the banks, the institutions. And so they kind of institutionalized it. But then there was this huge side of it that kind of got left or kicked to the curb in the seller financing, even in that NPL space. There's really no system that brings continuity. It's really back to what you mentioned. You've invested in, you've put all this money out, and you think what you're getting is X, and what you're really getting is Y, and then you're trying to bridge the gap and make heads or tails of it. So I'm excited. I've been watching you guys for a couple of years, and we've run into each other in several events. And so to hear, I want to give you guys huge, huge high five, the virtual high fives on that whole deal. Because you guys rock. You guys stuck with it. And you grinding it out, for lack of better words, to get it to this point, and then to hear that you've got another version coming out here in just a couple of weeks is, man, that rocks. That's great.
It's funny. Thank you. And it's funny you say that, because when we had this conversation before the camera went on, we were talking about, and how people want this are addicted to this short-termism, meaning I want my money now, I want it fast. And I think that's kind of how people look at business in and of itself in general. And Rick and I both realized, man, we just need to slow down, let things organically happen, and opportunities will come to us. It's like farming, right? There's no speeding up nature. And if you kind of go with that mentality of, you got to plant the seeds, you got to sow the seeds, you got to water them, let the sun, and then eventually you get that harvest. Yeah. And you start to follow that progression. And that's more of a realistic, I think, outlook. And you're not setting yourself up for failure. I mean, with social media, it's like you're either success, right? You pitch your product and you're a success by going on Shark Tank, and it's like, boom, we're done.
They call those like the 10-year overnight successes.
Yeah.
It's like somebody's been working at it for 10 years and people only see that last piece of the iceberg that's sticking up. It's like, oh, see, they're an overnight success. It's like, no, you don't know the work that went into it to get there.
Yeah. And everybody has told us too, like this can't be done like with Paperstac like this. There's so many moving parts that, so many people that have tried to do this. I think the problem, what has happened in the past was that technology wasn't to the point where it was accessible at a level where you could afford to do what we're doing.
Sure.
Just a year ago, we were talking with our developer. I said, what couldn't you have done today that you couldn't, or that you're doing now that you couldn't have done like a year ago? And he goes, a whole bunch of stuff, unless we had a whole team of developers. Wow. It's nobody's fault that they came out with a trading platform, it didn't work, or they quit. It's just, you have to line up that timing. There has to be a little bit of luck involved. And believe me, we're not far out of we're not out of the woods yet. We're still working on it and making sure that it's great. But it's, you have to have a little bit of that timing on your side.
Well, timing, and you said it, luck. You gotta get a little lucky.
So we're excited.
Yeah. Well, it kind of reminds me back, when you mentioned the technology aspect of it, because it reminds me back, we started building our own websites because we couldn't find good website people. So my wife learned how to build them, and I don't know how to build them, but she learned how to build them, and I come up with the clever URLs. That's my job. And she handles it from there. But the technology is very plug and play nowadays. So you can bring different things in, and the websites kind of just blossom into these amazingly beautiful websites. Whereas, I remember the first website we built, it was like 3 pages. I paid a guy $500 to build it. And the first page, the home page, was a picture of a building that our offices were in. And we photoshopped the name Pinnacle Investments over the name of the building and put that up. That was what you did.
Look what I can do with this Photoshop thing. This is awesome.
Yeah, this Photoshop is. Now they got Photoshop to make me look thinner and stuff like that. So I'm loving it.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how far and how exponential the growth is with the technology. And I think what it's allowing us to do right now, it's as smaller investors that are out there listening to this as well, is that you can bootstrap a lot of the stuff, and you can have technology on your side. What big box institution guys could only do 5 years ago, and that was kind of the good old boys club, you can do now. And so that's what we're trying to really bring to this space is that leveraging the power of technology, making it really, really a great user experience, which I can't wait for, the new.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. I think what it's also going to bring to the smaller investors is sort of a strength in numbers kind of thing. When, for instance, if you're selling a reperforming loan and you're selling it on a one-off basis, you got somebody, they're bidding, 14, they're looking for a 14, 15, 18% return. But when you can compile a bunch of reperformers and package those up and sell them, people think that there's a package discount. There's not. They pay more for that. They pay a higher percentage. And so one of the really cool features we're looking at that will be not right away, but it's coming shortly, will be an aggregate button for an institutional buyer to come in and aggregate all the performing loans on one platform and take them all down at once, which is going to be very exciting.
That's really exciting. what kind of technology do you see? Obviously you guys have been, how do you say, knee deep in the technology side of the business, which to me is fascinating because I'm old school guy. I'm still looking at things where it's, give me the paper, show me the note, like let me hold this type thing. And I love the technology. I'm enjoying it and learning it and growing with all of it. And I think it's something that's desperately been missing from our industry for at least a decade, maybe even more than that. But I agree with you that it took a while for a lot of things to be built and other development models to come into play where it would suit our industry. What kind of things do you see going forward, say over the next 12 months? Even outside of Paperstac, I know you guys have got a great model there. What are some of the details in that model that are happening? And then what do you see even outside of that model and how that's going to impact our industry?
I think for sure one of the things it's becoming it's more and more every day is it's more widely accepted for the mobile notary, sort of the digital notarization with the company like Notarize. I think that is becoming more widely accepted, and I get news about different states that are starting to accept it, and there is a company out there that we utilize, Notarize. They're out of Virginia. And it's a great platform. Somebody comes on, much like we are right here, and they actually will do a video conference with you, and they can do a digital notary, which makes the transfer of documents or it's more secure in my opinion because I've got an actual video of me notarizing something. It doesn't get more secure than that. Right. So that's one of the things. What do you see?
Well, there's two big things. The digital mortgage is going to revolutionize our space, and it's already starting to revolutionize just the entire, I'm talking the note space, but the entire mortgage.
Talk about the e-note?
Yeah, the digital mortgages. Yeah, and how that's going to, make an e-note, an electronic note, and how that's going to change how things are done. I think it's going to bring a lot more efficiency to the market.
Right.
But you have to really be alert for how, what the progress is with that. But another thing is, and we were talking earlier, is the use of blockchain technology and to being able to tokenize your assets to bring more liquidity to our asset class, a mortgage note asset class. There's companies out there right now that are just looking at being able to tokenize any sort of asset, meaning a process, meaning whatever it may be. So when they want to go raise more money, they just can go and sell those tokens in a market.
Okay.
Get that money back, right? And get that money. And then if they want to, they can buy those back at a later time, right? So it's going to revolutionize the way people are funding their businesses. And I think mortgage notes is going to be, the underlying technology is going to be on a blockchain. It's just, for me, all indicators are pointing towards that.
I agree. I don't know that the mortgage is going to be in the next 12 months, but I definitely
I would say not 12 months, but just in 12 months, see a lot of things coming out already that are going to start to move in that direction. There's a company called Propy, Propy, that is doing some real estate transactions through blockchain. And they're very interesting to follow. So if people want to kind of check out that, but get on board with that. It's not that you have to really, go wholeheartedly and start completely transitioning your business. But it's, if you're listening to this and you want to invest and you want to stay ahead and not one step behind, you have to look at those types of technologies. And it's not the speculation on the cryptocurrency. It's more the idea of what that technology of the blockchain, the distributed ledger, what that's going to do for investing overall. You should really keep in tune with what's happening.
I think it's a fire hydrant of information. Taking little sips at a time is probably the way to go. If you try to step in front of it wholeheartedly, you might get your head blown off with it. It'll make your head explode. But it is definitely something that you should dip your toe in the water a little bit just to kind of start to learn about it, because I think not just in the mortgage note space, but society as in general, business will be moving towards that. I agree with you there.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah.
And the thing that's, the funny thing about cryptocurrency and as a whole, I know that, some people either love it or they hate it. today, at the time we're recording, it's kind of even keel. You're not hearing a lot of social media hype about it, but yet you've got some really die-hard enthusiasts and people that really understand it. I'm not a person that understands it as intimately as a lot of other people, but I can definitely see the value that you gentlemen are talking about, especially in our space. And I even see it, in government agencies, like the VA hospitals and Department of Motor Vehicles and these different agencies that both state and federal level, if they could streamline what they're doing in a way that is much more efficient and they don't have to be so redundant in their efforts, then they would save a ton of taxpayer money, and they're, it'd just be so much more efficient. But so I love what blockchain stands for. It reminds me of that. There's a book that came out back in 2009 or 2010. It might have even been 08. It was written by a gentleman named Gary Keller of Keller Williams Agency. It's called Shift. And he talks about he talks about what was going to happen in the next 5 years actually is the same amount of what took place in the prior 20 years because of technology being so quick to adapt and quick to be embraced and quick to be applied. And especially with the younger generation of people, we're seeing a lot of that. So that's great. That's great.
And one thing to add to that is what you see is out there a lot of people in our country that are unbankable, right? Mm-hmm. Therefore, how many people out there are unbankable that for some reason would be great consumers, which would be great investors, but they're not able to establish that credit or whatever their situation is. They're able to. There's companies out there right now that are utilizing that blockchain to be able to proof up their credit in a different way to where they can then use alternative sources to have access to capital to actually invest in things. So it's so wide. It's just wild to find out all the stuff that's going on.
Absolutely. Let me ask you guys this question. And going back to the niche aspect of it, the bottom line, we've all made mistakes in this business, and but people who have been successful don't allow mistakes to set them back. What's maybe 2 failures or 2 setbacks that you gentlemen experienced in the space that you can learn from and you can share with our listeners so they can learn from it? I mean, you don't have to narrow it down to 2. I'm just saying.
Yeah. I think one definitely is verifying value on an asset, not taking a BPO, even if it's a fresh BPO, kind of running your own values. Okay. And then also is doing your own research as far as like following what your attorneys are telling you, but doing your own research. I've found a couple times when attorneys aren't always right. And so looking at those things for me, those 2 things were pretty big for myself. I don't know.
When I first started out in the business of mortgage notes, we got in it to look at real estate. And I was very narrowly focused on what we could purchase. The biggest mistake was being so laser focused in on one little avenue and managing with that single bottom line of just profits. When we started to go into profit and kind of a purpose and impact play, it opened our eyes to an entire new way of managing the assets at a loan level basis, right? We weren't looking at reperforming loans. We weren't looking at, the repercussions of what that does for the borrower, for the community. And when we opened our eyes to that, we were able to now open ourselves up to many more assets that we would generally just pass on and say, oh, there's no good deals. There are so many different little avenues that you can look at with this asset class that you need to explore, because it'll just help you in the long run. It'll help you raise money. It'll help you with your business for headlines. It'll help you, do a lot of different things to where. So in the beginning, I think we had blinders on because we were in it for one thing. And we stepped back from it, looked at the overall picture of what we have access to, and looking at it as, wow, we have access to somebody's very, very, very intimate situation. If you're talking about somebody's home, right? Sure. And what that individual can yield you just from the notes perspective, but as well as what else can that person yield you? So there's like so many different things that you start to think and create, and it becomes fun then. Instead of just, I'm going to buy it for 50, sell it for 75, made $25,000. Cool. What's next? So I think the biggest mistake in the beginning was just being so yeah, it's good to laser focus in on one little niche, but always kind of expand, because this asset class, the beauty of it is you have a lot of different ways of doing things with these mortgage notes. Let's just say, for instance, in the mortgage note space. So, and that, and the you can't cheap out on spending money on technology. Yeah. It costs money to play in the technology world, and so if you really want to do something, you have to do it right. You can't cheap out on it.
Okay.
And that's a big mistake we made early on. It hurt us a little bit, but well.
No, those are great tips and great insight, and I agree with all of you in with each of those, because over the years that I've been in the space, it hasn't always been perfect. We've made our fair share of mistakes along the way, and we've learned lessons, like you gentlemen have, in regards to, don't cut corners. Don't cut corners. You've gotta, in the famous words of Ronald Reagan, trust but verify.
Yep.
And dig into these things, because whether you're spending your money or you're using a line of credit or you're JVing with somebody or you're spending your family's money, there's a fiduciary responsibility to that money and to that investment, even if it's your own. I mean, I may invest my money or our household money, but I still have, as an investor and as a husband, I still have to explain those things to my wife when they go south or if they don't quite work out. And so kind of operating at that level and always making sure that you don't cut corners. I hear so many times where people are like, well, do I really need a BPO? Well, you don't really need a BPO, but you might want to get a BPO. You don't really need to wear your seatbelt, but it comes in handy when you all of a sudden suddenly stop.
I mean, that's a huge point. And Rick talked about, when you don't cut corners at that beginning stage, you really try to prove up that value. For the new fund that we're putting together, I mean, what we're doing compared to even what we were doing before with getting 2 BPOs, if they're so far off, you get a third. And really pricing that in to your business plan. Like, look, this is not even acquire a note. It might cost you $500 and you might pass on the deal. Sure. But it's better than spending $500 or not spending the $500, spending $25,000 and losing. So it's sometimes a tough pill to swallow, as we have a lot of small investors that are in this space and they're like, man, just to do your due diligence, it's going to cost $450.
Yeah.
This is a serious business. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's, you have to be able to do that, and technology can leverage that a lot for you. If you're not doing it on a grand scale, you can do a lot of the stuff and cut those costs. But if you ever want to scale up and you're looking at 1,000 assets or something, you're going to be putting out some good money to safely navigate into those.
We were talking in the green room that it can be a hobby for some people, but if you're going to do this business full time or you're going to do it successfully, you need to be prepared to put in, the hours to learn and then the hours to execute. And if you do that, then you seem to get real lucky a lot.
It's still better than working a 9-to-5 job. So I don't care what anybody says. Being an entrepreneur is like, it's this up and down craziness. My wife is like, what? I'm like, this was a success for me. She's like, what's the paycheck? I'm like, well, nothing. It's the future. This is what's coming. This is the paycheck. And she's in advertising sales. So she's like one thing. It's like, get the money, sell the ad, get the money, and that's it. Boom, I made my money. So it's like the entrepreneurial journey, if you're not on it, is like it's difficult, right? It's hard, but
your wife must be talking to my wife,
yeah. But this is really good.
I think they're having tea with
my wife. How much
also.
do they pay you?
There you go. The women are getting together behind our backs, and
absolutely,
we're married to crazy guys.
Yeah, no joke. And that's okay. I'd rather be crazy than boring.
Absolutely. You were commenting a moment ago about investing in the due diligence side, and what I've learned, when people understand that simple little rule, that shifts them from being a novice investor to being a mature investor. Mm-hmm. And that maturity continues to grow, but it won't grow until they make that shift at the end of the day. And I understand. I mean, we've spent money on due diligence on files, and we didn't buy them, because what we found out was actually more riskier and was actually going to cost us a lot of money if we went down that path. And so we tapped out, and we went on to the next one. And I've done deals where we've lost $40,000-$50,000 in due diligence costs, and that's a tough pill to swallow. But it's a lot easier to swallow than $2 or $3 million.
Yeah, and it comes back to that short-termism, right? That look, this is not. It doesn't mean you lost $50,000 now. But if you're taking a snapshot of your success as like a year, I mean, it's just not. It's like, look at it a little bit longer. You're in this as to make a good business. To make a good business turn a profit sometimes takes years. Amazon took years. They gave away a lot of money to just grab the market share that they saw, but they were looking at the bigger picture. So it's like, if you're wanting to build a business and you're looking at flipping something like that's fine. But if you're really looking at building something sustainable, don't look at it if you spent the 20 grand and you lost it it's lost, it hurt the pocketbook. But look at those other things that you're going to use as a metrics along that journey to say, you know what? Yes, but this is what this resulted in.
Right. I agree. And I really love what you have written behind, just stay hungry and stay humble. And I would add never stop learning. Never think you know everything. We learned stuff new just yesterday about this business. And so I would definitely tell people, stay hungry, humble, and always learn.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's funny that you mentioned Amazon. 6-7 years ago, Wall Street was like screaming at Amazon because Jeff kept, just spending money like he was a drunken sailor. They couldn't figure it out. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And he's like, we need this. This has to be in place. This has to be here, there, and everything else to make the big picture work. And now he's the richest man in the world or something like that now. I heard like some ridiculous amount of money he's worth.
It would have been a lot better for those shareholders if he was able to realize that profit. But he said, I have to put that money into research and development for the bigger picture. And he was getting the most criticism, like you were just saying. But that's kind of the mentality. You have to be bulletproof in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because your shareholders and your investors in our world, it's our wives and our family and our friends that are like, what are you doing? And it's like, well, I'm doing this because I see a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road that I want to be at this level. And I'm not going to be an overnight success. This isn't a Milli Vanilli concert by any stretch of the imagination.
Milli Vanilli rep.
Well, I wonder where you could fit that one in. Milli Vanilli, that was good, man. You slid that one in there. That's good. Yeah. No, it's not an overnight one-hit wonder deal. But a lot of people think that's what it is.
You may have aged yourself, Troy.
I did, didn't I?
Yes.
So I'll tell you this little game we play at church. So at church, we're friends with the various pastors, and whatever pastor is speaking that Sunday or Saturday night, we'll give them a key word to say, and they have to fit that word into their sermon. just to see if
fun.
there's about 8 of us that do this, and so we
didn't do that before this, but next one we do, in the green room, let's do that, because that's fun. Because next time it comes up, it's like, oh man, you said that. It's kind of like the Pee-wee's Playhouse. It's like the password is toaster, and then whenever said toaster, you're like, toaster, what's going on?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's just such a. I mean, I love what you guys are doing. I've always been a huge fan of you guys. I've always, I've watched, close up, and I've watched from a distance. I've always, cheered you guys on, because I think you guys, I believed what you guys were doing, although I didn't always understand it. But I also believe that the industry had to change. It just had to change. You can only run on a flat tire for so long, and at some point it's got to just be revamped altogether for the good of everybody. And there's some old timers out there that aren't going to get it, and I respect them, because they've paved the path and have kind of opened a lot of doors for you and I and other people in the industry, and so I love them for that. But I love what the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years means in this industry, for both you guys and myself and other investors out there, because the technology, it's exciting. I mean, it really is exciting. It's almost like getting a new app on your phone. You're like, hey, I want to play with this app and see what it does. And the industry needed that. It really did. So I congratulate you guys on all your hard work and time that you put into it, because without that, we'd still be stuck in the mud as an industry. And so, kudos to you guys, big time, kudos, virtual high five on that. One last, we got a little more time here. So I got a whole list of questions, but we haven't really followed it very well today. So that's okay.
Yeah.
This is what we call freestyle podcasting. That's what the beauty of it. And we talked about that out of the. So okay. So here's a question. So let's imagine for a moment you're standing in front of a room of brand new investors. People are battling their fears, anxiety, risk, and uncertainty about whether or not they've made the right decision. What 2 or 3 strategies would you recommend for them to focus in on to get the best results, or to, give them the best chance at success?
Well, first and foremost is to run that type of financial model up front for any asset that they're looking at, and really put the numbers down on everything and list it all out. Once you've seen that and then write down, if, let's just say what I just invested in went completely wrong, look at it from that perspective and write down a few things why it went wrong. And it'll start to make you think. And you can do this with a teammate, or you can do this with somebody else. But what you do then is kind of put yourself into that situation of, this could go really bad. Any investment can go really bad, right?
Sure.
Put those down on paper, download them from your mind, because a lot of the times those things get caught up in your mind, and it hinders you from making that decision. When you not internalize them as much, put them on paper and look at them. You can subjectively look at the worst case scenario, right? Work out problems to that scenario if this was to go this way. And with the numbers that you've just kind of ran off, if you can kind of say, you know what, I can stomach that. I still feel good about this. Or you know what, I don't like the way this is going. I can't really figure out a good way to work around this problem, because let me tell you, you're going to have a problem. There's going to be some problems that come up. Put them out right out in the front and say, this is what's going to happen. This is why this project failed. You fast forward a little bit, subjectively look at it, take yourself out of the picture. work with a partner or yourself. And that's what I would say to people in a room that are looking at getting in something. Go run a worst case scenario. And this is what can happen. You can lose all your money. Okay. Well, how do you hedge against that? How do you protect yourself against that? So it's really getting yourself on that. I tell people to really get yourself on the side of reality. It's great to have your head in the clouds, right, and dream, but put your feet on the ground at the same time. And just face it that you're going to fail. And are you okay with that? And if you do, how are you going to learn from it? So that's really.
I would echo that a little bit, but I would say before you buy an asset, figure out what's your lane. What are you trying to do? Because that's going to guide your decision making. If you're in it to build a performing portfolio, that's great. You probably don't want to buy vacant houses where the borrower is deceased. It's just know what you're looking to do, and that way you can get in there and then be aware that you may have to alter what you're going to do. But that's the great thing about notes is those alternate exit routes are there along the way, that if you do hit a dead end, there's a way to get out to the right or to the left. But if you go into an investment, or before you start buying the investment, you go in with a clear path of what you're trying to do, it makes it, you tend to buy those type of assets. When we first got into the business, we got into the business to get the real estate. Mm-hmm. So we naturally were buying vacant houses, and our first call was to the investors if they were still around, or to the owners, and saying, "Hey, do you want to do a deed in lieu?" Mm-hmm. And so, but when we pivoted, and it sort of became our mission to save 10,000 families' homes, mm-hmm. you can't buy the vacant house. That's because that's not down the path that I want to go down. That's down the path of getting the house back. So know what kind of pie you're trying to bake when you're going to the grocery store.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, along those journeys, part of the mind mapping that I like to do is why you say, okay, I bought this investment and I completely failed. Well, first off, what does failure look like to you? Write that down. What happened? When you start to think about, boy, what could happen? That's when the real, that you don't want that fire to start underneath your feet. You kind of know, you know what? I planned this out. I knew this was a possibility. And let me look back at my notes of how I navigated that,
or how you can react.
And how you can react. You don't want to react, be reactionary. You kind of want to be as proactive as possible. We all understand that investing there's a lot of uncontrollable variables. The one thing you can do is say, what can go really wrong here? And then put those down and say, as I navigate, if I hit one of these things, at least I put some sort of plan in place. It makes it a little bit more digestible, right? Because like you said, a lot of this industry, there's a lot of unknowns as you're going through. You're like force-placed insurance, all the different acronyms that are used in this business. So just get more familiarized with what good can happen, what bad can happen.
I also have sort of come to love the be prepared aspect of it. Try to prepare yourself as much as possible, starting with education. Learn as much. We did it back asswards when we got into this. We sort of jumped into the deep end of the pool and waited 12, 13 months. And then we actually got some formal education and kind of went and looked back at the minefield we just walked through and said, wow, we're lucky to have our arms and legs. So I'd say get prepared with education, spend money on actual legal counsel, and set your business up right from the beginning. If it's going to cost you a little extra money to pay for an attorney, but if you can do this at the beginning, my dad's an attorney, and he always says you always plan for the divorce or the explosion, the worst case, as TJ said. If you've prepared for all that along the way, when it happens, it's not the first time it happened to you. You've already been through it once.
It's still going to suck.
It's not going to make it any better.
But at least you're like, it wasn't like out of left field. You're like, holy cow, what do we do now?
Be prepared. I think also with the education or a mentor, you're going to pay for experience one way or the other. Whether you can, pay somebody to mentor you, or you do it and you fail and lose money that way. Either way, it's going to cost you money. I tend to find that the mentor costs you less money, you get more out of it. So just my 2 cents.
No, that's great. I love it. And there's so much wisdom and truth in all of that. you know, I tell everybody we're in the problem-solving business. That's what we do. We solve problems and we get paid for it. And in order to do that for other people, we have to understand our position and our role in it. And what does that mean if it goes up? What does it mean if it goes down? And how do we adjust the sails of the boat along the way? You know, and I tell people all the time, nobody's going to die in the note business. You know, nobody's going to die because a note went bad or anything. So that we have working for us. But at the same time, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket on any one asset type class or situation, unless there's some high level of certainty to it, you know, and to have a plan A and a plan B and a plan C that's just good in business. I call it defensive investing. You know, one of the things we all learned when we started learning how to drive a car was to be a good defensive driver, because you don't know what that other person in front of you is going to do, or the person behind you, or the person on the side. So you're always looking for your exit strategy in the event that something happens. And even with that, you don't always get out of it without a few scratches at the end of the day. So, but you at least live. And that's the important part. So, no, this is great. This is great. One out of each of you, what's one word of wisdom that you would like to leave our listeners with? You know, just one piece of wisdom or word of wisdom or advice that you kind of cling on to every day.
I'm going to just say be present in your decisions. If you're just present in the moment and you're actually paying attention to what's going on and not having your mind somewhere else, and you can actually sit and think and take it all in, you'll tend to make a lot better decisions. And if your mind is focused, if I'm in this, you know, sitting here talking to you and I'm thinking about something else I have to do, I'm just not going to be here. So be present in whatever you do.
That's great.
I would say, in as much as it's so cliche to say is you know, enjoy the failure. Don't be afraid to fail, because a lot of the limiting things that you're going to do is based around this fear of failure. But really look at failure as something that you're almost striving to do in a way. Definitely, we don't want to fail, but that's reality. I mean, everybody's going to fail. In baseball, you hit 3 out of 10 baseballs, you're 300 hitter, you're probably going in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. Look, there's a lot of similarities like that. You don't have to succeed at every single thing that you do. And that's okay. And that's okay. And we all want to succeed, obviously, going into it. But don't be afraid of that failure, and to be able to learn from that failure. So many things I've been trying to do was perfected. Before I would, you know, I'd write something, before I'd release it or do it, I'd make sure, it has to be perfect. It's just, there's no perfect. It's just, you know.
If you're not failing, you're probably not trying hard enough, or you're not taking enough of a risk. If you're not failing, you're not getting outside your comfort zone enough. And then,
well, yeah, you're not fighting with yourself. The reality is we're all going to fail, right? And in a society, we brought up that failure is horrible and brought up that it's so bad, but really it's the truest way to learn.
What is it? Google pays people to kill projects.
Yeah. I mean, there's the newer type of companies. You know, they're coming out with that type of mentality, and people in the past were saying, well, "What the hell? What do you mean failure?" It's really kind of a backwards way of thinking that it's even hard to explain or even conceptualize in your brain, because we're so fixated on it. But look over how they teach math over in Asia, and how many kids are up at the chalkboard making mistakes in front of the class with no type of anxiety about what the kids are thinking behind them. In our school systems and things like that, you're so afraid to fail because you're going to be made to look ridiculous. You're going to be put on social media or Facebook like, oh, Johnny didn't know how to do 2 + 2. So then he completely, you know, goes away because he made that one mistake of he didn't know how to add. There's so many different ways of looking at things and how to do it that, you know, that failure it's inevitable. Put yourself on the side of reality that those types of things happen. And when you start to operate from a side of reality, I think that you start to succeed more. You put yourself, you don't have that inner struggle constantly. You kind of liberate yourself to be able to put yourself in a position to where now you can succeed.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. That's phenomenal advice. And I'll end with this real quick. One of my biggest failures in life was not writing a book sooner. And I'm not saying that to promote the book. What I'm saying is the reason I didn't write a book sooner was because I failed third grade. I couldn't speak and I couldn't write and I couldn't spell. And so I had a hard time kind of putting it together. And so my third grade classmates went on to fourth grade at the same school. So that kind of carried out throughout my elementary years. And then junior high, I went to a completely different school, and because our family moved. But the point being is that I always had that little voice in my head. And so as I grew older, I would misspell things and this and that. And people were like, hey, you misspelled this. And it was always kind of that like beat down type approach. And then it finally got to a point where one day I was like, all right, forget it. 10 years I've been thinking about writing this book. And it's not due to a lack of knowledge. It's a fear of if I misspell something or I do this wrong or do that wrong, somebody's going to come out of the woodwork and go, you know what, you didn't do this right.
Yeah, exactly. Great story. Yep.
And I finally got to a point where I'm like, I don't care if they tell me I did it right or wrong. There's 1,000 other people or hundreds of other people that have already written me and said, this book is phenomenal. And even people that are what I would call veterans in our industry that I have, massive respect for, that I even look up to, have read it and like, this is by far the best book ever when it comes to the note space. And so, it took me years to get over that. And I was my own worst enemy at the end of the day, because those people that said things back in third grade, I couldn't tell you their names if I had to. I couldn't pick them out of a lineup if I had to. But hopefully they're doing well. I don't know what they're doing, but hopefully they're doing well. There's no hate in my heart about it, but it was like I was my own worst enemy about it and being fearful of it. So great stuff, guys. Great stuff. I love it. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for pausing your day and checking in and being here on the Thriving Investor Fuel Your Success podcast. It's been an honor to have you gentlemen here. I'm looking forward to seeing things launch here in a couple weeks. That's got to be super exciting. And when that happens, let us know. We'll have you guys back on, or we'll help you guys promote that out to our database as well. So thank you so much. I hope you guys have a great day. Have a great week, everybody. Take care. Bye now.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening and being a part of the Thriving Investor community. Please share this podcast with a friend or a business associate that like you, is interested in learning from top mentors in the non-traditional investing, real estate, crypto, blockchain, buying debt, and so much more. Troy wants to give you a gift, so go to troyfullwood.com/book to get your free copy of Troy's latest book, The Power of Paper. Again, that's troyfullwood.com/book to get your free gift. Go check out the latest episodes and shows at the Thriving Investor community at thethriving.investor.com.